Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. I'm your host, Michelle Berard, founder and CEO of Michelle Berard LLC, and I'm really delighted to share this hour with you where we examine all those places where spirit meets life and the joys and challenges that may bring. I want to thank my guest on the November 15th, 2024 show, entrepreneur and author Alex Bruckman. You can connect with Alex on LinkedIn or at his website, bruckman.ca. That's BRUCKMANN.ca. If you missed that show, make sure you listen to the replay. You can find our complete show archives, including the November 15th show, at the somewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. Now, this month's guest is familiar to many of you already because of her numerous appearances on TV and radio. Julie Edelman is the best-selling author of the how-to book, The Accidental Housewife: How to Overcome Housekeeping Hysteria One Task at a Time. She is a well-known lifestyle expert and has appeared on The Today Show, The View, Rachael Ray, Fox and Friends, The Doctors, ABC Audio Networks, and iHeart Radio. She lives in Florida, close to her son, who is her heart and testament to a blessed life lived fully. Julie speaks publicly with heart and humor and in high heels about the value of sisterhood and not letting life's detours define or stop us from achieving our dreams. Julie recently published The Accidental Sisterhood, her debut novel and a testimony to embracing a life detour with hope and determination following her triumph over breast cancer. So I would like to welcome Julie Edelman to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. Julie, how are you today? Thank you for being on the show.
I'm great, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you. And I have a question too, somewhere in the middle. Okay, I understand the concept, but I'm going to interview you for a second. Tell me what that exactly means. And sorry about the door slamming. You never know what's going on in this home.
Oh yeah, no problem. And that's the way of life these days. Somewhere in the middle. When I started this podcast, I had this vision of me creating impact in my little corner of the world. And the goal was really to share people's journeys, because I think we're more alike than we are different. And I think we learn that by hearing about each other's journeys. So hopefully we can meet somewhere in the middle and understand that even though we may have different interests, different, beliefs in different areas, that we're all basically the same. Everybody wants the same thing. We want a good life for ourselves and our families. We want to be healthy, happy, and prosperous. Nobody's trying to get anything from anybody. We just want to all be happy.
And, that really leads to the whole concept of my book, Sisterhood, too, that, somewhere in the middle, we all connect and we're not alone, and that we have one another, but we're also on very different journeys. But that doesn't mean we can't all be there for one another and get along.
Exactly. And that's hopefully what we can talk about more today. But first, I want to ask you two questions.
Okay.
Julie Edelman, who are you and how did you become who you are today?
Ooh, how long do we have? Well, it's been a journey, as it is for all of us. And, it's sort of interesting because in the last few years, particularly, I think I've shared with you, I was diagnosed with breast cancer about 1.5 years ago. And what that does, I actually found it through a selfie I had done, which I encourage everyone out there to please do your monthly selfies, because the earlier you find it, the better your chances of beating it. But, I was asked to speak at Moffitt Cancer Center as their, I guess, testament to a woman who'd gone through the breast cancer journey. And I was honored, obviously. But what I realized in the speech as I started to write it is that when you ask about me, my life has been an accidental journey. And, it started even when my mother told me when I was old enough to understand that I was an accident, that I wasn't planned. So I mean, my roots really do go very far back. And that's not a joke. I mean, that's true. But as life evolved, you go through your 20s, you're beginning your career. And then my 30s, I got married and I became, it was love, marriage, and a baby carriage. So accidentally, once again, I got thrust into this role that I really didn't prep for. I was trying to be a career woman. I was trying to be a mother, a wife, and also find time for myself. But somewhere my child had to be fed, and I had to keep my home clean enough so health inspectors wouldn't come here. So I tried to figure out, well, how could I do this? How could I balance this? And at the time, I was doing a lot of segments on The View, the TV show, and I knew, both from a professional point of view, that I had to be something different. A lifestyle expert was a dime a dozen. But also through this journey at this time, I was years had passed and I was a wife, but I was also about to be divorced. I was going through a divorce. My father passed away. And my dog had taken a walk and had a stroke. He was older. So it was a perfect storm of my life. And trying to balance all of these things and navigate my way led to me coming up with this persona, the Accidental Housewife. And yeah, Michelle, I've always used humor in my life to navigate my way. So I began finding these interesting little hacks that were not your typical hacks. Things like using Alka-Seltzer to clean toilets and coming up with pop, pop, whiz, whiz, pop, pop, fizz, fizz, away will go your poop and whiz. And I put them into a book and found that vodka was a great multitasker as a sanitizer. And if you drank a shot, your house looked cleaner to everybody. But, so I found these hacks, but also once I put them into this book of mine, which I decided was the way to go, I got lucky. It hit the bestseller list. And because it resonated, not so much the hacks, but because my journey, it's like where you talked before about somewhere in the middle, connected with a community of women trying to find their own place and realizing they weren't Martha Stewart, nor did we want to be. And so I gave them sort of the opportunity to embrace what I called our imperfections and come out of our broom closets and say, we're not perfect, and that's okay. So that began a community for me, which was really most important and also got me through that period. Then fast forward to about a year and a half ago, as I mentioned, when I was diagnosed and then was going through this journey with breast cancer. Once again, I was taking a detour in my life, and I took it and said, I'm going to turn this into something, a dream that I've always wanted to do. And that was writing this book, The Accidental Sisterhood. And also gave me another way to once again connect with women who are going through similar journeys, devastating detours. And it doesn't have to be health. It could be a divorce. It could be losing your job, empty nesting. And to try to embrace that and use it to as a way of inspiring them to go after something important to them. And again, to connect and express and know you're not alone. So the long answer, and forgive me, my life has been an accidental journey, and I never know what tomorrow brings. I don't look there anymore because I realized too, staying present is all we have. And particularly a few months ago, there were those horrible hurricanes in Florida where so many were affected by that. So it sort of grounds me. It makes me thrilled to be talking to you, to be able to hopefully inspire and empower women to, go after their dreams, believe in themselves, but also rely on the power of sisterhood. So there you have it.
There we have it. Now, there were so many things that kind of jumped out at me from what you just said. One of them first is, of course, the breast cancer diagnosis. Do you mind if I ask, where are you in that journey?
Sure. Well, I am over a year now. Well, it was a year ago in May that I finished my radiation treatment. So I guess you say I'm I guess over a year in remission, which is terrific. I rang that bell, which is all important that you do. Thank you. Yeah. And, but it really has to be here now talking to you about what has transpired that I never would have thought. Because also breast cancer didn't run in my family. And you often think that, that's the link. nothing to do with it. There are so many other things that happen. So in my breast cancer right now, I go every 3 months. I continue to do monthly self-exams because, as I shared before, that's how I found mine, annual mammograms. And just am very aware that you need to be on top of these things. So yeah, I'm happy I'm here. It actually, in a strange way, Michelle, it was a gift. And I know I would never have said, what do you want? These are the top 3 things I want as gifts in my life.
Right.
But because of it, I'm here talking to you and hopefully able to help so many other people. And like I said, my book too, it's something I always wanted to write. And it's now, it's out there and it's great. And I'm excited about it.
Well, so is this your first foray into fiction?
It is. I had done the how-to book, The Accidental Housewife, which was fun, you know, and both of them are done first person. Like the book that I've just written, Jules Malone, who's the central character, is, you know, I talk about it from me. You know, I'm riding down the street. I. So yes, this is my first, what I'm calling a romance thriller. And hopefully it's first in a series. This is book 1 of the Accidental Sisterhood. And I'm working on the next one as we speak.
Amazing. So first, give us a brief synopsis of the book.
All right. It's about 4 women, 1 man caught in a web of love, lust, and lies that is unraveled by the power of sisterhood. And I mean, it's sort of fun. And there's a movie trailer everybody can watch too. Not movie, I call it, it looks like a movie trailer. It's a book trailer that's really fun. And when I watch it, it's just like, wow, this is so cool. But it's about Jules Malone. She's the protagonist in this book, and her relationship with this 1 man she comes into contact with called Sean Connors. And Sean is this charming man that, you know, just razzle dazzles her with that fairy tale kind of love you want, in terms of sending her roses, champagne. And, you know, even though she's an older woman, as we've talked about, you know, romance isn't dead. She's been married once. She had a fiance who she calls her white nightmare, because it was funny, but he was abusive. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. Her son Max has Asperger's. Her mother also abused her in a different way. So she's not this simple little character. I can't share with you what's part me, part that, because if I do, I'm going to have to put you in that imperfect broom closet we talked about before. And friends who know me know that they can't share. But so it's her journey from when she first meets this man to then finding out that he's been telling her a lot of lies and deceptions, and that there are other women. She's one of 4. But together, she figures out how to align them. And it's interesting because they're very different characters too. One is a cardiologist, a pediatric cardiologist. The other is a divorce attorney. I'm not going to tell you exactly how they play. And then one's a millennial who is in the Navy and is an intelligence officer who opens an interesting shop. So they form this bond, which results in a way to deal with Sean's deceptions. And the ending will literally, I think, blow you away.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, what inspired you to write this particular story? Usually, I think writers get some, you know, nugget from somewhere. What was your nugget?
Nugget was real life.
Okay.
Clearly, though, and that's the beauty of writing fiction. You can take it anywhere you want.
Okay.
So, but it's founded in a lot of things that have happened in my life. You'll see in there that Jules becomes a best-selling author of The Accidental Housewife. The character Sean is based on, yes, somebody, but didn't quite do all these things, but I could take it, as I said, anywhere. And you don't have to worry about filtering when you write fiction. But I like to call this a work of faction. And again, I can't tell you what percent is which, but so the nuggets came from real life. And then also understanding that when I read, and I love to read, the things I like to find, and that twists and turns, and also having the time to read. I made the chapters like potato chip chapters. So they're short, and you can continue, or you put them down. I mean, it's not War and Peace, but it's a fun read, but it's also you come away feeling that you've connected, and those are the reviews I've gotten with people, which is terrific. It's very exciting to know that not only you think the book is good, but people who don't know you, or friends and family. So yeah, Michelle, it's based on nuggets in my life that I have now turned into a whole gold bracelet.
That's amazing. Well, and I get curious about the relationships among the women, right? So you've got these four very different women, and there is this trope, I think, in our society that women can't get along with one another, especially if there's a man in the mix.
Yeah.
How do you, obviously without telling the plot, but how do you get these women, how do these women come together and realize, you know what, we're not the ones who are the problem. This dude's the problem.
And that was the fun part and the challenging part, because you're right. And and actually feedback I've gotten is it's nice to see that this book was, first of all, written not by, a wife who's gone through this, but by somebody who's involved in this menage a four or five. But I got them to understand by just saying, you know what, and this is another life lessons. Sometimes you just got to do what your gut tells you. And Jules decides that even though she could just let it be and just do her thing and end it with Sean, that would be wrong. She couldn't do it. And so the women understood because they were smarter about this. They didn't look at each other, to your point, as enemies. They were caught in his web, separate, and they had no idea about one another. So without going into much more, so they came to respect each person. And at first, clearly they didn't. I mean, it wasn't like, oh yeah, great, come on in,
Right.
But they came to understand through their own journeys, and each woman had their own, why their relationship was important that they had with Sean, but then also that, you know what, this guy's an asshole. Forgive me. Can I say that on this? Yeah.
I think you can. I think you can.
It wasn't
we'll just put a disclaimer up there.
Okay. Yeah, because I use some other strange words in the book, which are part of my language, but we won't say those here. So yeah, so I think it was really that the power of them understanding that it wasn't what each of them had done to one another and the way it plays out, they see that, but that it was this man and that together they could be stronger. But it was their choice too. There was nobody, saying you need to do this. It was, you know what, this should happen. So
that's amazing. Because I think one of the things that we see, especially with social media these days, you just see women fighting over men. And I'm like, is that really necessary?
No.
I remember telling my girls as they were growing up, there's a whole lot of D out there in the world. You can just find it anywhere. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Why and it makes me wonder why women are pitted against one another, for men. It's kind of interesting.
Well, I think again, it goes to your show, Somewhere in the Middle. We met in the middle, all these four women, and we didn't use our own issues, because a lot of times too, just generally in life, people react to you because of their own come-froms. It's not because they hate you specifically, or that you've done something wrong, or they're jealous of you. It's their own insecurities. And each of these women clearly had theirs. And as you'll read, they have pretty interesting backgrounds, very different, but interesting. And that too, I wanted them to be not always older women, but that's why this millennial who's so cool. And she's like, brings this other depth to it, and also a relationship of an older man, younger woman.
Right.
So, so to your point, yeah, there's no reason, but when I see that, or I'm faced with it, I've learned through just experience, and that it's that person's issue. It's not about you. So just let them be. But not everybody looks at it that way, because they have their issues they're bringing to that table.
Well, and that's interesting, because I think of myself as a younger woman going through different things, in my 20s and my 30s, and really kind of thinking everything. Obviously, we are the star of our own movies, right? We are the star of our own lives. But when these other people come into it and do certain things and say certain things, oftentimes, like you said, it has nothing to do with you. But when you're in 20s and 30s, you don't necessarily recognize that unless you're extremely wise, very young. Yeah. it took until I got into my 40s where I started realizing, oh, that has nothing to do with me. And when I realized that, I was able to calm down about things. I know that sounds weird, maybe, right? But do you know what
No,
I mean?
no.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
because I
Well,
think that tendency for overreaction tends to come from you thinking that it's about you when it's really not. Is that what you would think too? Or how would you feel?
absolutely. And I think the problem too, or the root cause is that everybody's in everybody's business, with social media. Nothing's a secret, you're out there telling people about your life, what you do. So to me, I like the old days, and I have not been a major social media person personally. I'm doing it professionally because I want my life to be my life. But younger people, particularly, and we've seen this, are so influenced by others through Instagram, TikTok. And in ways, sure, is it great that we can all communicate and talk, but it also creates more pressures and more barometers of comparison and seeing these things. But on the flip side, it gives you more resources to hopefully help people too. So, yeah, to your point, I'm with you. I think too, as we get older, we just become more authentic because we've been through so much stuff. It's
Yeah.
what's the point in pretending we're something we're not? We are who we are. And to your point, unless the youngers are more experienced, they can't quite get that. And that does come with age. So you sort of have to, but women our age should be more aware, more astute, and more forgiving, and not look for permission from other women, but to just want to support one another in whatever journey or way.
I think it's interesting too, because you mentioned when you get older, I don't want to say it's that we care less, but sometimes I say, I have 0 F's to give sometimes. I can't worry about whether or not I'm impressing somebody.
Right.
And I think that is something that you get to a certain point, you're like, you know what? I've been working so hard to be the right thing for every situation, whether it's as a mother, as a wife, as a girlfriend, as an employee, or what have you. How did you find that changed for you as you aged? And mind you, still very young and hip and happening in your 50s, right? But still, I mean, it's different in your 50s than when you're in your 20s and 30s, the things that you'll tolerate and the things that you'll do. How did that change for you?
Well, I think the real catalyst for change was recognizing certain things in me that I knew didn't feel right. I grew up with a mother who was, I had to be perfect all the time. And that barometer I carried, but it was hard. It was hard. I mean, I remember shopping with my dad when I was in my early 20s. I was out in California, and I couldn't make a decision on the pair of jeans because I was so used to my mother. So the catalyst to that was, and I sort of, this is a sort of truth in the book. This fiance, who was the white nightmare, had bought me this beautiful ring, and when we were finished, I actually took the money from that ring, and he gave me a gift. I later call it. It was the gift of therapy. I went into therapy, and the best thing I'd ever done, because it took me to have to really deal with issues. And of course, particularly lack of feeling loved, which is self-worth, which is the bottom line of all of us. If we don't feel that, nothing else matters. It's not success. Success isn't measured. You never feel successful. It was like I was watching an interview the other day with Kathy Bates. Even I love her. I don't know, and she's got that series now, Matlock, which is on, which is terrific. But she was talking about her mother and her father, and it really, that's where it stems, Michelle. If you don't feel secure or loved from the two most important people in your life, that can scar you forever, unless you say, I need to learn, I need to fix this. And that's what I did. And I'm thrilled because I have a son who, there's often we repeat things that parents do. I'm not, because I've learned what it was, what the triggers were. And I'm so close to him. We talk every day. He's my, 30-year-old little bouncing baby boy, not anymore. But you can see how you really can. At the end of the day, we have to change our lives. No one can do it for us. It's great to have support people, even with breast cancer. But at the end of the day, I had to decide, am I going to let this take me down or build me up, lift me up? And I think I think I've answered your question. Have I?
Well, I think you've done a great job with
Okay.
it, because
Okay.
I think that's important. That whole journey of self-discovery is really what you're talking about, I
Yes,
think.
ma'am.
One of the things that I felt like was important as I've gotten older is learning to kind of be my own parent, right? Parents are giving the best that they can with what they have at that time. And sometimes what they have is abysmally bad or abysmally limited.
Sure.
And as, like you said, we take that into adulthood with us. If we don't learn to understand that and kind of give ourselves the love that we're missing, or the praise that we were missing, or the security that we were missing, it can damage relationships down the line, and it can damage generations down the line.
Absolutely. It's self-affirmation of yourself and saying, I'm okay, I'm good, I'm worthy. It's really the I'm worthy part, and loving yourself, because you can't love anybody else if you don't, in the right way, if you
Right.
don't love yourself. And when you said that about repeating, in a sense, I had done a documentary on child abuse moons ago, when dinosaur age, when I was back in college. And I interviewed 3 different women. One of them was 15. She murdered her child. She had been abused. The most interesting one, though, she was a woman at 27. She had a 5-year-old daughter. When she got help and came back to being herself, her daughter actually became a baby again. She started crawling and doing all the things she couldn't do because she had to be somebody else growing up. And I was astounded by it. But that's the impact, to your point, and you know what? They thought they were loving their child the way they should, because that's the only love they knew. And that's why it's repeat, with sexual offenders, the others. It's love defined by your roots.
Right.
But again, we can hopefully try to change that. And I'm not saying everybody has the ability to go and get that kind of help, but there are online places, there are other places, and whatever help, or friends, whatever it is that can help you, lift you up. It's just really important. And I feel for those who don't have the resources, available to perhaps get that kind of help, but maybe can start to believe a little bit in themselves that they're good people.
Well, and that's really important, understanding, well, if everybody can understand that no baby comes into the world as a bad person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's, yes, I mean, we can go into the whole world politics on that one, but
yeah, it just makes you think every time I don't know, it just makes you think. Well, tell us more about, if you don't mind, your white nightmare and how that journey, that part of your journey transformed you particularly.
Well, in the book, Jules, AKA me a little bit, found this guy who she wasn't really interested in dating. And her sister-in-law, Tess, just said, we had met, we lived on the same floor. And I had actually introduced Jules introduces Tess to her brother, Gil. And they hit it off to get married. So she felt she needed to do something for me. So she introduces me to her boss, which is the white knight initially. And he's great. He's older. He has, lots of money. And she says, hey, instead of tuna fish for dinner, you can have a great dinner. So I get involved with him, and she was right. He was a nice guy. I didn't say I fell head over heels. And so the white nightmare in my life, he was a good guy. I mean, I thought, but I can't tell you the whole story because that impacts what happens. But clearly there's a great quote by William Blake from Songs of Innocence. We err will believe a lie who see wit, not throw the eye. And on the surface, except I will tell you one thing, he had a toupee. Which he thought everybody didn't know, but he did. They did. All of a sudden, it becomes somebody that she chose to be blind to. She was also younger. I was younger. And to your point, we don't see some things because we're also looking to be loved. And,
Right.
this guy wined and dined and, did the superficial things until one day he didn't. And I'll leave it there.
Wow. And how does that change? How does that change you as a woman and your perception of yourself, particularly if, if you're not in your 20s, we'll say that. If you're
Mhm.
not in your 20s, I mean, I feel like when you're in your 20s, you're like, I'm still young and sexy. I'm not saying you don't go through heartbreak. I'm saying,
Sure.
though, that you kind of have this sense that I'm still young and sexy. I can go out there and find somebody else. And that's also possibly part of your goal at that age. How does
Sure.
it change when you're maybe in your 40s or 50s?
I think you get more gun shy, not gun shy, smarter. You don't want to get hurt again. Um, at the same time, though, you're lonely. Loneliness exists, and particularly when empty nesting starts to come into it. Um, so, in the case of these characters, they all, for different reasons, were on their own in some ways, and they had different needs. But I think as we get older, yeah, I think part of us says, I don't need this,
Yeah.
and part of us can read it and see the flags. And sometimes, like Jules, myself, I'm a die-hard romantic. I love romance. And so when a guy would, buy me flowers and he was charming, we'd have dinner, dancing, the initial wooing, if you will, is wonderful. Because it's that fairy tale that we all sort of want, whether you're a little kid or you're, an older woman. It's sort of nice to believe in love and happily ever after.
Yeah.
Until you don't, because all of a sudden you say, snap out of it, as Cher would say, So I think, yeah, that would be the way I would share with you was how an older woman and somebody like myself looks at romance, looks at relationships.
Now, you mentioned that you're not on social media much, or rather, you're on there professionally, but not
Yes.
personally.
Yes.
Have you ever seen this trend that's going around, or this, I'm going to call it I don't know, conflict? There's this trend that I'm seeing where women are saying, no, I think we're done with dating because the men have been deceptive and
Yeah.
they're expecting things of us that they don't give us in return and so forth. And I'm seeing this with even younger women now. What do you think might be going on there? I know you've got probably limited experience with this trend, but what do you think might be going on there?
I think people are tired, and I think it's safer to say I'm done than to go out there. I think that's part of it. And Jules in the book says she's done after 2 failed relationships, the white nightmare and a good guy gone bad. Um, because it's tiring. It takes a lot of work to really build a relationship. And so I think the trend is like everything will shift. But I think our world is also so overwhelmingly complex that to work so hard at a relationship, we want it to be easy. It should be easy. It shouldn't be, if you think about it. So much hard work. But that's when you talk about social media, women putting themselves out there, though, are asking for it. And all the dating apps and all those things, you put yourself in this environment that you are just like getting beaten all the time, or you'll go out on a date, oh, it's great, and then no, and check, swipe, whatever you do.
Right.
So it's no longer the old kind of romance. It's mechanical. So it's work. I guess maybe that's why they're getting. It's more work than it is just dating. And so I think, and as you said, I really haven't had experience. I've been in a relationship for over 4 years now, which he knows, though, he could be the next victim in my book. I mean, so he lives with that fear, but that's okay. And actually, it's a hint of him at the end of the book. You'll see.
Right.
So, but I think that's really it, Michelle. I think maybe it's so much work that they're done. Rather be by myself. I like myself. Maybe people are liking themselves more too, and not needing somebody else to complete them.
Yeah.
But so I think that's changed. We grew up when things were a little different, the old-fashioned way. Want to get married, want to have that husband, but we were also in conflict because we also wanted a career. So we're sort of that bridge generation, trying to be new fashion with old fashioned, and in the midst, balancing that. But were you, if you don't mind asking a personal question, you've been married and divorced, or are you still married to the same man?
Married and divorced more than once.
Well, that was the answer I was hoping for. Only because that's what I'm saying, because as we evolved, we got smarter about it, that we didn't have to stay in a marriage, whereas our parents would, even if it wasn't right. And it's, or for the kids,
Mhm.
And I had that conflict because I didn't, my son, what would happen to him? How would he, but I realized that I had to do what was right also for me, because he would see the unhappiness in our home and that would impact him as well. And the good news from my side, and I'd love to hear yours, of course,
Mhm.
we need to like go out and have cocktails together. It's like the girls down the hall here. Let's have a happy hour, a yappy hour. We'll yap some more. But we become friends, my former husband and I, and we co-parented Luke really, really well. And like just today, I got a text asking me how I was about something that had happened. So it's also
Right.
about the adults figuring out how to be adults in a divorce
Yeah.
and not use the kids as, pawns and so forth.
Well, and that is true. That's very challenging. And when you're in a difficult relationship, not so I'm going to make a distinction here that might feel like I'm kind of, teasing out some hairs here, but I think it's important.
Sure.
There's a relationship that's not working because the people are too different, their basic values are different, they've changed over time, what have you. And then there is a relationship with fundamentally discordant properties that could be considered abusive, for example. Like, I didn't know I was in an abusive relationship until my attorney told me.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, because
Interesting how blind one can be, isn't it? That goes back to the quote. Yeah.
And it wasn't abusive like I was getting punched out every day or anything like that. It was emotional abuse. And I didn't realize it until he finally did punch me. and I went to a divorce attorney, because to me that was abuse, right? Oh, you hit me. Okay, now I don't live with that. I just remember, we're about the same age, so you probably remember. Did you ever see Farrah Fawcett in the burning bed?
Yeah.
I was like, if a man ever hits me, I am afraid that I will set him on fire one night. So I cannot stay with him, because that's not going to happen. We just won't. I don't live like that. And so that's what I equated abuse with, was the physical. I didn't realize that I was being emotionally manipulated and abused for years until my attorney said, "You're in an abusive relationship. I need you to read this book." And until it was, he promised he would stop, was the name of the book. And until I read that book, I didn't even realize that I was in an abusive relationship. So for us, we were able to co-parent to a point, but then at some point there was always some conflict, he would
trigger some
push buttons on purpose. And finally, I had to say, I can't keep participating in this. And I had to pull back. So the co-parenting got more distant. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We still co-parented. There was never any problem with conflict over the kids per se, but I had to put that distance between us. I don't know that we would ever become friends.
Well, you had to put boundaries down, because yours was, he just kept stepping over them. I was fortunate with my husband, my former husband. That wasn't him. I mean, the white knight would have been, if I had married him, I would have been like you. No, I would have put up restraining orders and everything for a variety of reasons, emotionally as well as physically. So I think you learn to respect yourself. And also you feel that maybe they'll change when it's something like that. Oh, this is going to pass. He's not going to do that again. It was just, maybe I triggered it. You look at yourself and say, and Jules asked herself that with Sean and some of the things he does. You question your own self. Maybe it's my fault. You look at yourself and you eventually realize, no, it's not. But you go through those various emotional roller coasters of, no, this can't be happening. Okay, he's going to change. Maybe it's my fault. And then realizing, no, and get the fluck out of there. Fluck, by the way, is a good term.
I like that.
Okay. Well, I actually used it in the book. It's a gang of geese doing what you think they may be doing. But it seems such a more elegant way of saying the word. So Jules used that a lot.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and what would you say to younger women who are like I said, I didn't even know I was in an emotionally abusive relationship until divorce time, right?
Mhm.
Until we're actually at that point. And I think sometimes that's hard to recognize. So I wasn't sitting there going, maybe it's me. I was more like, la, 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 la. No, I don't like this. La, 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 la. No, I don't like this. You know what I mean? Kind of going through life, head down, taking care of the kids, working all that. And you're so busy doing what you do that you don't even realize that you're being kind of harassed and manipulated on a daily basis. What would you say to younger women? What are some things that maybe they should think about in terms of the way they approach relationships, the things that, and it could be men or women, doesn't matter, it could be a same-sex relationship even.
Mhm.
What do you think people should be looking for?
Well, I don't know what it's looking for. I think the biggest thing I've found over the course of time is to trust your gut. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And it may sound simple, it is simple, but I ask you, if you had trusted your gut that something wasn't wrong with a relationship, you probably would have saved a lot of time. Now, that's not so easy when you're younger because you don't have the experience of gut being proven right. But I think that's the first benchmark. And if you see more and more flags and you're constantly asking yourself the same question, that too, because it shouldn't be like we were talking about so much work. The right relationship in person is the thing that will show itself. It will shine through. And it's also, don't be desperate to have a relationship. You know, it's hard again when you're younger to love yourself so and say, I'm good. Although nowadays, I think more and more young people are good. And there are
Yeah.
stories I just saw women, men taking themselves out to dinner and enjoying it on
Yeah.
their own. So I think that's sort of cool that younger people are embracing their own sense of self. But yeah, Michelle, I think the advice I would give is trust your gut and sure, but allow yourself to enjoy the romance of it. But after 3, 4 dates, if all of a sudden there's a red flag and then you see that flag again,
Yeah.
listen, heed your inners.
Yeah. Well, and there is hope because I know for me, I started cutting my losses much more quickly.
Right.
11 years in the first marriage, 3 years in the second. I'm like, I
Good
don't,
girl. Good.
I'm like, and now I think you got like minutes. I don't think you get,
Yeah.
I don't think you get days now. You get minutes,
Well,
but
I'm sorry,
I
go ahead.
think you do start as you get older, kind of trusting your gut more quickly. The challenge comes in when you have kids because
Of course. Of
and
course.
then you've married your finances together. There's a reason marriage falls under contract law. But I think that you do kind of, I don't know, as you get older, hopefully see things more quickly because you recognize it's almost like pattern recognition, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's yeah. And there, what's the expression about dogs? Gosh, there's an expression I can't think of it right now. It's part of getting older. But I think exactly what you're saying. At the same time, I want people to allow their heart to be shown. We also get so many walls that we put up nowadays that it doesn't allow you to sort of just fall in love. I mean,
Yeah.
it's simple. I love these old rom-com movies, and books about love. And that's why at the end of the day, I mean, even Jules, she's not going to give up on love. She's smarter now. Because she's looking at the perspective differently. And that's another thing. Look at the takeaways from a relationship that doesn't work. What have you learned? And maybe that will help you get to a better relationship next time. And the person that was in your life then, they're there for a reason. And I know for me, that's been the case. It's sort of like connecting the dots. And I say that to my son about life's journey. They lead you towards a path, a lot of detours, but there's a reason. And if you can learn from those different moments, relationships, jobs, whatever it is, that's the most important thing, because hopefully you won't keep making the same mistake, but you might. But don't also beat up on yourself. Just use it as a stepping stone to get where you want to be. And where you are is the right place, whether it may not seem so at the time.
Absolutely. I love it.
Right.
So many words of wisdom. Hopefully, I mean,
That'll be my next book, The Accidental Wise Woman.
I like that. I am so excited about your book. I'm so excited about all the things that you shared here. How can people connect with you? Where can they find you? And where can they find your book?
Well, Amazon They can find it audiobook. I did the audio voiceover. I needed to channel my inner Meryl Streep. Where are you when I need you? And there's the Kindle version, ebook, and of course the paperback. So Amazon. Also, to get me, you can go to my website, julieedelman.com. My socials are Julie Edelman on Facebook, Instagram. So I am all over the place professionally. And hopefully next time we chat, we'll continue to sail, be on the same paths with whomever it is in our life. But if not, there's a good reason. And to stay empowered and to trust, as I said, the power of sisterhood and us.
I love it. The power of sisterhood in us. Julie Edelman, thank you so much for being on Somewhere in the
I'm
Middle.
sorry. I did forget
yes,
one
ma'am.
thing. Sorry, one last thing. Forgive me for interrupting you. Percentage of all the book sales is going to Moffitt Cancer Center. So please, 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 I am an advocate for mammograms, for doing self-exams, and hopefully finding the cure for breast cancer, because that is just, it's invasive. 360,000 women this year alone are being diagnosed with it, Michelle. So I apologize for interrupting you. As
no, thank you.
Julie, enough already.
No, thank you. That's wonderful. As I think I mentioned to you before we started this interview, my mom died of complications from breast cancer. So I am so happy that you are willing to do that, to share part of the profits of your book. Say that again. It's for Moffitt
Cancer Center. And if you go to my website, you can link there and give a donation to help, as well as the monies that I'm going to be contributing from book sales.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Julie Edelman.
It's been great.
Thank you for being with me on Somewhere in the Middle.
Well, thanks for meeting me somewhere in the middle.
Well, y'all, that's our final show. And what a way to end the podcast. Somewhere in the Middle has been on the air for 8 seasons. And I am really happy that you chose to spend this time with me. I want to thank all of my guests over the years. You are all amazing, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your life stories with my listeners. I learned a ton from you guys, and I know the audience did as well. I'd like to send a big thank you out to Beverly Black of Tribe Family Channel. Beverly encouraged me to start Somewhere in the Middle and helped me launch. As I've said at the start of nearly every show, we are here only because we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. At the end of the previous show, I said we would take a trip down memory lane, highlight a few memorable interviews, and talk about lessons learned and what's next. I've since decided that looking forward rather than backward is the best way to end Somewhere in the Middle. That is the most profound lesson I can leave you with today. And it's one that every guest has shared in their own way. Creating and hosting Somewhere in the Middle has been an incredible journey, and I'm so thankful you chose to share it with me. You can still reach me online at urbanbookeditor.com or michelleberard.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram as Urban Book Editor. Send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. You guys be good, stay mindful, and remain prayerful. Peace and blessings, y'all.